O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable to you. Amen. This morning, the title of the sermon is called The Good Old Days. So I'd ask you to think about, as I go through the sermon, who do you look to when life gets hard? And do you look backwards or forwards in those moments? So as we read today in Exodus, we all know that change is hard. Anytime we want to make changes in our life, we know it can be hard. They say, whoever they are, that it takes 21 days to ingrain a habit or make a change. In this morning's reading from Exodus, we see the Israelites near the beginning of their journey to change from enslavement to free people. In verse 1, right before what I just read, it says that they've been traveling for 45 days. The first 45 days. Thanks to God's hardening of Pharaoh's heart, the Israelites are finally set free from Egypt. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to be free on that first day that they left Egypt. We see in verse 2 that the whole congregation is complaining to Moses and Aaron, and rightly so. They are hungry. So they left Egypt 45 days ago. No doubt they brought some food with them, and it's lasted to this point. So they're hungry. But we hear some exaggeration in their plea, in their complaining. If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. They are so hungry that they long for the days when they were back in slavery, reminiscing about how good they had it back then. So let's be honest, when life gets hard, don't we all complain and pine for the days when life was so much easier? Who among us here doesn't hearken back to pre-COVID days? No masks, no social gatherings without fear of infection. Ah, yes, the good old days. But as we look at the Israelites' former situation, clearly the good old days that they are favoring in verse 2 were not so good. In Egypt, as you will recall, the Hebrew slaves were worked until they dropped dead, or fed just enough to keep them going, despite what they said about eating all that bread. They're beaten, and they're made to build the grand cities and monuments of the kings of Egypt. Sounds like a great time, doesn't it? Looking at their complaining, though, in the context of the entirety of the Hebrew Bible, we know that complaining is not an affront to God. If we look at the Psalms or Lamentations, those scriptures are filled with complaints to God. These complaints are meant to convey the pain and suffering of God's people, and also that God is faithful. These type of complaints or lamentations are part of Holy Scripture. And as human beings, God expects us to struggle and to complain to God. In our current moment here in the United States, there is what some might call complaining. Our black and brown brothers and sisters are not just complaining to God, but also to us about how they have been and are still being treated. They're not hungry for food like the Israelites, though. They are hungry for justice and equality. So how do we hear their complaining? As righteous complaining, like the Old Testament and God does? Or do we hear it as whining? In the book Injustice and the Care of Souls, William Blaine Wallace, in describing the work of today's white church, says this: I believe the principal task of the church in the present-day U.S. is to reclaim and restore our Judeo-Christian pathos, a tradition of grieving that both encourages and equips us to embrace our present experiences of suffering and death toward feeling engagement, toward freeing engagement in and for a world groaning in travail. In that same book, Old Testament scholar, and one of my favorites, Walter Brueggemann, says it this way: the beginning of noticed pain signals a social revolution. As Christians, we have to ask ourselves, are we hearing the groaning, the pain that our black and brown brothers and sisters are sharing with us these days? And as the church, are we asking ourselves and are willing to join with them to complain, and as Blaine Wallace suggests, to engage in and with them in what is unjust and wrong in our society and in our world? In our tradition in the church, there's another time when we ask this same tough and soul-searching question about justice. Can you guess where it is? I bet you're going to be surprised to learn that it's during our baptisms, and which sadly we've not been able to have one since COVID, obviously. But we ask the parents, the sponsor, or the candidate who's old enough this question, and it's going to sound familiar. Do you accept the freedom and power God gives you to resist evil, injustice, and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves? This question is not just for the parents. It is a communal question. It is a reminder to all of us in the congregation of what we stand for: God's power and freedom, and what we stand against: evil, injustice, and oppression. In the United Book of Discipline, I know you probably read that all the time, we read in the social principles regarding the rights of racial and ethnic persons the following: racism plagues and cripples our growth in Christ, inasmuch it is antithetical to the gospel itself. White people are unfairly granted privileges and benefits that are denied to persons of color. Therefore, we recognize racism as sin and affirm the ultimate and temporal worth of all persons. We commend and encourage the self-awareness of all racial and ethnic groups and oppressed people that leads them to demand their just and equal rights as members of society. The complaints by the Israelites do not go unheard. As we hear in verses 4 and 5, God responds by telling Moses that God will rain bread for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. But God doesn't just feed them. God also uses this opportunity to test and prepare them to become a free and righteous people. This God who delivers them from slavery, rescues them from Pharaoh's chariots, also meets their physical needs, fulfilling both their hunger and their need for rest through the structure of a daily provision of bread and meat. So, what is the spiritual manna that God is giving us today to help the church become more fully aware and free? Could it be the awareness of other people's suffering? Or could it be, as I heard someone say the other night in one of my seminary classes, if COVID has taught us nothing else, it is that the church doesn't need to happen in a building. Amen? Are we willing to be the church even when we aren't in this building? Like the Israelites, all of us, you and me, are on a journey to become more fully free. As individuals, we journey to be free from our ego-based selves and into our true Christ-like selves, to let the light of Christ shine through us. As a congregation, we are on a journey to more fully live out being the body of Christ through Newark United Methodist Church. And certainly, as a country, let's all hope and pray that we are on a journey where all people are treated equally, regardless of the color of their skin or who they love. Much like the Israelites who weren't fully free on that day Pharaoh let them go, we know that black people in this country did not become fully free citizens the day after the Emancipation Proclamation. From that time until now, our black brothers and sisters have had to deal with many, many wilderness and desert situations. Situations where they were not and are not treated as equal citizens. From overt racism through harassment, discrimination, lynchings, and other violence, to even unconscious bias from those like me who consider themselves friends and allies. We have to acknowledge black and brown people's lived experiences are different than those of us who are white. Did you know that African Americans who served in World War II were excluded from benefiting from the GI Bill? Did you also know that after World War II, when there was a large housing boom and places like Levittown were built, that African Americans were intentionally excluded through a deed restriction? This land of milk and honey that we call America, a land of milk and honey for white people, and that we have really enjoyed, has not been fully realized or enjoyed fully by black people. As we look at Exodus 16 and where the Israelites are on their journey needing God to meet their physical needs, we have to acknowledge that some people in America right now think the Black Lives Matter movement is exactly what black people want, to just have their physical needs met. Despite what they say, I don't believe that black people want America to give them anything. From what I read, hear, and what I've experienced while working at Habitat for Humanity, is that black people want to have the same access, opportunities, and freedom that all people do, that all of us white people take for granted. From the Black Lives Matter website, in their About Us section are these words: every day, we recommit to healing ourselves and each other, and to co-creating alongside comrades, allies, and family a culture where each person feels seen, heard, and supported. We acknowledge, respect, and celebrate differences and commonalities. We work vigorously for freedom and justice for black people, and by extension, all people. We intentionally build and nurture a beloved community that is bonded together through a beautiful struggle that is restorative, not depleting. For me as a white person, I've never had to worry about what might happen if I get pulled over by the police. Or I've never had somebody follow me in a department store, afraid I might steal something. I've never been discriminated against. I've never been oppressed. So doesn't it stand to reason that our work as followers of Christ is to listen, hear, and understand what black and brown people's experiences are like and how we can help? Racism in this country is both a personal issue and also a systematic issue. It's personal by the words, feelings, and thoughts we might have, and it's systematic in the structures that favor one race over another. In our society, in our criminal justice system, a black man and a white man can get convicted of the same crime and get different sentences based on the color of their skin. That is wrong. So like our faith, we have to get our personal relationship right, and we have to get our relationship with others right. Hear the good news today, that Jesus Christ is our way to life, both personally and corporately. Black people in this country have had Moses-like leaders. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, W.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. They have all helped them make strides against the systematic racism in our society. Today, we are witnessing, and I hope we are all listening and participating in a renewed effort to make white people more aware and for this country to become a more just and equitable society. The good old days for the Israelites in Egypt and the good old days for us may not have been as good as we remembered. And they certainly were not good old days for everyone, as we've come to understand and appreciate for black and brown people. So as we journey together as the empowered people of God, let us remember that God is with us. Like God was with the Israelites in the wilderness. And God is with us now in this wilderness of COVID and this wilderness of racial awakening as well, as we work towards equity and justice for all of God's people. Amen.